So in the previous video, we looked at the basics of how a vapor compression refrigeration system works and how it looks like on a TS diagram, where we start from a saturated vapor or a slightly superheated vapor and compress it to a superheated vapor at a high temperature and pressure. This vapor then condenses to a subcooled liquid or saturated liquid, which is then expanded in an expansion valve to achieve low temperatures in the evaporator, and the fluid which then ends up at a slightly inside the dome with a liquid vapor mixture, which then is ready to absorb heat from whatever needs to be cooled and reach back to the saturated vapor state at 1, where it is ready to undergo the cycle once again. So this basically is how a vapor compression refrigeration system works. Let's look at it from a component perspective, how these components are arranged in a household refrigerator, for instance. So here we have a 3D view of a household refrigerator. Here we see two figures of the same refrigerator. This is an isometric view from the front. This is how it looks like from the rear. So let's focus on this one first. What you see in black is the frame, is the refrigerator as it looks to you, and the red ones, the red lines are either inside the refrigerator or behind the refrigerator. And here on top you see the twisted tube that is carrying the refrigerant. The refrigerant is actually evaporating or boiling inside that tube, which is at the top, and that is the lowest temperature in the entire system. And refrigerant boils at a very low temperature of -18 to -10 degrees Celsius, and absorbing heat from whatever is in the freezer, whatever we want to freeze, such as ice and other ice creams and so on. So if we want to freeze something, we want it very cold, and that's where it absorbs the heat from the freezer and evaporates or boils the refrigerant which is traveling inside these tubes. And then it becomes a superheated vapor, right, or a saturated vapor. And then once it is a saturated vapor, it then travels to the compressor, which is usually located towards the bottom of the fridge. And then the compressor raises the pressure of the refrigerant, becomes a high temperature, high pressure fluid, and that high temperature, high pressure fluid then circulates through the condenser, which is in older refrigerators you can see a mesh-like design at the rear of the refrigerator. In newer refrigerators it has been merged into the refrigerator, so you cannot easily see it, but in older refrigerators you could actually see this at the back of the fridge. And this is actually the condenser, where the high pressure, high temperature vapor first condenses to a saturated vapor, then further cools down to a saturated liquid, and then perhaps a tad to the subcooled liquid state. So once it reaches the subcooled liquid state, it is at a high pressure but at a reasonably low temperature, and this is expanded in this expansion valve. And once it expands in the expansion valve, it comes to a very low temperature because of the Joule-Thomson coefficient, and then it is a liquid vapor mixture, which is then ready to enter the evaporator once again to absorb the heat from the evaporator, and once again turn to a saturated vapor, which then goes into a compressor. So this is how it looks like in the component wise. This is the rear part of the fridge. If you look at it from the back, this is the compressor. The output of the compressor goes into the condenser, and the condenser output then goes to the expansion valve, and then from the expansion valve it goes through the evaporator and then back to the compressor again. So this is how it looks like in a component view. And so now let's look at how to calculate the COP of this particular refrigeration system, right? So we want to calculate the coefficient of performance. And we do know that the COP of a refrigerator is given by the rate of heat removal from the evaporator to the work input required at the compressor, right? That is the rate of heat removal from the low temperature reservoir to the work input, the rate of work input required, and here there is only one heat work input required, which is the compressor. So this is the rate of electrical work done on the compressor, and this is the rate of heat removed from the evaporator, and so the ratio of these gives us the COP. In if this were a heat pump, we would have done Q dot condenser divided by W dot compressor, because the same cycle can also be used as a heat pump. However, the definition of COP would be different for a heat pump as opposed to a refrigerator. So we'll continue, and then Q dot evaporator, just as we saw with the Rankine cycle, the Q dot evaporator is the heat absorbed from 6 to 1, and that is basically, we can write that as m dot times H1 minus H6, and divided by the work done by the compressor is to take the vapor from 1 to 2, so that is H2 minus H1, and so assuming that it's a steady flow system in which the flow rate of the refrigerant is constant and it does not change with time, I can write the same m dot times H2 minus H1, and so I can get the m dot out, and it's just H1 minus H6 by H2 minus H1, right. So it's the change in specific enthalpy in the refrigerator divided by the change in specific enthalpy across the compressor, and that gives us the COP. Typically, household refrigerators and air conditioners have COP values ranging from about 2.5 to about 3.5, and central air conditioning plants such as the one in block 9 at IIT Gandhinagar, for example, have higher COP values ranging from about 3 to about 4.5, and there are various reasons for it, which we will discuss, some of which we will discuss in the class. So in the next video, we are going to look at a different power cycle, one that involves gases instead of vapors, and we will look at something called the Brayton cycle that is used in gas turbines for power production as well as gas turbines for aviation.